Right, let's run through the track listing on this album, shall we? It starts off with Love in Itself. It's a strange song, actually. I do like it, but then again, I'm biased, so don't ask me. All of these insurmountable tasks that lay before me, all of the first and the definite last that lay in store for me. Coming on to that, just if we look at the subject matter of this album as a whole, as Alan Wilder said, the songs on this album are usually not typical Martin Gore songs, in that Martin's songs are usually very personal, and they're very much about emotions, and this is a very sort of like outward looking album, more sort of like the social economic things, and it was really, if you look at, because this is sort of like the 80s and Margaret Thatcher, and we had the North-South divide where the people in the southeast of the country were making a lot of money, and the northern side of England were very poor, and they were very turbulent times, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but that subject matter does come across in this album. Lines like, "More than a party, we've had enough of this blind man's buff, you've left us in the dark for long enough." When I was younger listening to this, I just thought it was singing about a party. This is more than a party. Someone's taken the ice cream and these people are crying in the party. But that's not what he meant. If you look at it now from a more grown-up perspective, more than a party would be more about, the politicians. You're telling us we're here to have fun, but you take all the ice cream and we've got none. So it was really about greed and corporate greed and that. And even, like if we look at the grabbing hands grab all they can, everything counts in large amounts, that is really about business. The grabbing hands grab all they can, almost like corporate greed, taking everything counts in large amounts. So this was very much Martin looking outward into the world, and they'd grown up here. They were growing up. At this stage they'd been around the world a lot, and they had seen a lot. Martin's songwriting had changed, obviously, because he'd seen more. So Love in Itself, strange video, and on the subject of music videos, the band talk about in the early days when they made music videos, they felt that producers were just taking the piss out of them. It was like a production team are hired in to shoot this video, and they're like, oh god, who are these guys? All right, mate, stand there, get yourself some big trumpety bugle thing. There was a time when all on my mind was something that they really brought into this album, and I don't know, I get the feeling that this was the Alan Wilder influence, are kind of like discordant sounds, sounds that are in the background and they sound like they're a little bit not out of tune, but they just like they catch you in the way that your ear goes, oh, that's odd, that doesn't belong there. I really think that was Alan Wilder that added those types of sounds, or gave that kind of depth to it. What's interesting about Love in Itself is how it gets to that middle eight when it's got that, it's kind of like is it a Spanish guitar? It's got like a kind of like a piano riff. Very strange, but it's interesting because at that time they were so anti-guitar, but there they were playing a little acoustic guitar. But Love in Itself was a strange song, but I like it. More than a party, ooh, ooh, dun, 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 dun. Very stern, very serious, very unsettling. That ooh, ooh, dun, 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 ooh, ooh, more than a party, and just the way it ends, it's very dramatic. As I say, when I heard it as a kid, I just thought, oh, they're singing about a party. Oh, someone's taken the ice cream, they've got none. But as I say, looking back at it now, More Than a Party is really about corporate greed. The rich taking a lot and leaving less for the poor, so to speak, if you want to put it in literal terms like that. I suppose what I'm saying is More Than a Party is really about an imbalanced world So this, having said that, that just shows that this album was not only relevant to that time, but it's so relevant to today. Depeche Mode were always ahead of their time, always were. Pipeline. Get out the crane, construction time again. What is it this time? Incredible song. As I said, I had some of my group members on my Facebook page recently were having a debate about the song. They were talking about the song, and I jumped in. I said, it's a great song. And someone said, you're kidding, Vaughan. And what I was trying to illustrate was, it's a great song as far as innovation is concerned. It doesn't have much melody in the sense of, it doesn't have like a song structure. In fact, if you had to break the song down into its chords and play it on the piano, there's not much to it. But that's not the idea behind the song. And Depeche Mode do that in a lot of their albums. I always feel that Depeche Mode, it seems like when they when they release an album, they always release one really sort of radical track. We heard it in Big Muff. We heard it in My Monument. We heard it in that, and in this album it's Pipeline. So yes, they will, and I think if we even jump to the recent track, Spirit, think of the song, Hey Scum, what have you ever done for anyone? That's a very radical track. So Depeche Mode always have one song that they throw on the album to be so really sort of like, which kind of shows, hey, we are the innovators of sound in the genre. So, and of course on the Construction Time Again album, it was Pipeline. And Pipeline is a fascinating song because their idea behind it was, obviously, all the songs contain samples of hitting things and banging things. But this song, they took it a step further because they thought, let's do a song almost like a experiment of the audio file. And what I mean by that is, Gareth Jones talks about how this song had no EQ or sort of processing on it. Everything was recorded raw on the field and then taken straight back to the studio and just loaded in. Gareth felt it didn't need any EQ or compression or anything. It was literally just loaded in, and the mix was obtained by literally just the balance. And what's also interesting was when they sampled the pieces for this, you know, all the different sounds for this song. Apparently that was the sound of them hitting a fence in Shoreditch, and there's loads of other different ones here. But once they gathered the elements for the song, they thought, well, why don't we take it a step further, and why don't we have Martin actually, instead of taking the elements back to the studio and recording it there, let's have Martin sing the song actually, you know, in Shoreditch, in the construction zone or the industrial sites. So, and that's exactly what they did. So having sampled all the sounds and whatnot, they took all these sounds back to the studio and they made a backing track. Took the backing track on a tape machine out to the construction sites with Martin. Martin was wearing a pair of headphones, and he had the backing track of the song on the tape machine, and they recorded his vocal onto another machine. And that is why what's very interesting about this is Martin was literally standing, I believe, under a railway arch or something, and those train sounds in the background, there's like this, all that atmospheric sound, everything that was captured in this track was because Martin was actually standing under a railway bridge or something. And that's what's so fascinating about this song is nothing was added in post-production. Everything was just made from the raw sounds they gathered there, and as an experiment of sound, and took it back to the studio, and things were just mixed and balanced. There was no EQ or compression. And that's brilliant. And what really stands out to me is Martin's voice, because if you listen to the way he sings it, guys, in those days, they never had auto-tune. And I don't want to bang on about auto-tune. I suppose they'll never endorse me. But like all these things, these are tools to help us make records. But there is something magical about those days when we never had the tools that we do today. It just seemed like people were a lot more experimental those days and used to think out of the box more. We didn't have sample libraries where you can go, oh, I want the sound of a fence being hit. Oh, I'll just go onto this website and, there's a sound. Oh, yeah, I'll take that sound. It wasn't like that in these days. It's like every sound you wanted, you had to generate it yourself. So I've got so much respect for these pioneers. And as I say, whenever I'm talking to younger producers or coaching younger producers, I always send them back to this, to these records, because, even if you're not a fan of the music, you cannot deny that the innovation behind these records is what has influenced music production the way we know it these days. Now, just to illustrate my point on Pipeline, as I talked about it being a song not based on melody, it's really just based on sound. And I mean, if you had to do Pipeline on a piano, probably wouldn't really work. It's because there's no real sort of chord information. It's all just sounds, which makes it brilliant. I mean, if you did it on a piano, it'd probably be something like "Down the crane construction time again. What is it this time? We're laying a pipeline. Let the beads upswell. So it really is just like one chord, but as I say, this song cannot be judged for its sort of like song or structure or musicality. It is really a song on innovation. And as far as innovation goes, this level of production that was done in this album pissed all over everything that was around at that time. And Pipeline, I'm not having anything bad said about Pipeline. Everything Counts, probably the most commercially successful song on this album. Not that Depeche Mode or we Depeche Mode fans are concerned with commercial or chart success. It's probably the song on this album that you would like if you weren't a fan. Just really sort of easy listening in a way, and had nice sort of like reed type sounds and pretty pleasing. The subject matter once again being the grabbing hands grab all they can, everything counts in large amounts. And also, as we talk about the lyrics and the chorus, everything counts in large amounts. Even if your English is not very good, if you lived in another country where your native language was not English, and that is why I think Everything Counts was so successful, was because of it was more of an easy listening song, and it had a really good chorus and hook, and with lyrics that were easy to sing along to. So Everything Counts, a classic Mode favorite, and one of the songs that people who are not Depeche Mode fans like as well. 2 Minute Warning, Alan Wilder's first contribution as a songwriter. 2 minute warning, 2 minutes later when... What can I say? Good album track. Awesome sequence. Good use of different textures and timbres and sound. Love the metallic. Fletcher. Shame. Do you ever get that feeling when the guilt begins to hurt? Seeing all the children wallowing in dirt, crying out in hunger, crying out in pain, at least the double washout when it starts to rain. Dark subject matter, and it's got that dun 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 dun. Dave Gahan taming the python, of course, it's got that dun dun. And watching the live in Hamburg, I'm not going to do the moves, but the way Dave Gahan does the dun 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 dun. The atmospheres in some of these songs are quite unsettling because they really take you somewhere else. Guys, nothing sounded like this at the time. This was so groundbreaking. I mean, even now, nothing sounds like this. It was so ahead of its time, and wow. The landscape is changing. Alan Wilder's second song contribution. Very pleasant album track. I don't care if you're going nowhere, Just take good care of the world. Very sort of traditional in its song structure. And well, of course, what makes it sound untraditional is the arrangement, not the arrangement, the production and the sound used. But yeah, The Landscape is Changing is a pleasant song. It's not one of the best, but it's okay. It's not one of the standout tracks, but it's not a bad track. Told you so. This track is a showstopper. It's very off the wall, energetic, erratic. Check out the Live in Hamburg where Dave Gahan goes one-to-one with the speaker and he headbutts it. This to me is the hardest song on the album. It's really... Once again, I struggle to find the vocabulary sometimes because sometimes it's a feeling you can't describe, but it's very edgy, it's very dark, it's very aggressive. I mean, if you look at the lyrics, and do those feet in modern times walk upon the flowers and walk upon their brothers while their heads are busy lying low, trying to keep oak to cover. That is the time-old story of humanity, of people walking over each other and, greed and treating each other like shit. Now, Martin Gore's always had a fascination with religion, and this to me is the song where that sort of first kind of surfaced, that fascination with religion. So they can go and told you so, told you so, told you so, told. It's got those creepy told you so, all speeded up at, obviously at different pitches. They obviously went told you so into a microphone and then went told you so, 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 and speeded it all up. Standing in line, the blind lead the blind, waiting and waiting for an overdue sigh. Brothers and sisters playing Chinese whispers. If things aren't suited, then they'll get diluted. I mean, you can read into that any way you like, but this is dark and sinister, man. But not for the sake of being dark and sinister. Martin Gore's not pretentious as a songwriter. When his songs are dark and sinister, he's expressing something that he genuinely feels and sees. He's not doing it just to be dark and sinister. I'm going to go off topic here once, but just hear me out. I went to a Gary Newman concert once, must have been in Brixton Academy, many years ago, and there was the support act on, and this girl came up dressed like a big gothic kind of fairy, and then some bloke came on the stage as well. He was the keyboard player, and he was dressed like this kind of gothic wizard, and the song was something like, "We are the sons and daughters of darkness. It would have been easier if you had died in a car crash." And I was like, oh, fuck off, get off the stage. Because to me, that was a typical example of someone trying to be dark and edgy and moody and, oh, look at us, we are so dark. No, you're not, you idiots. Piss off, get off the stage. Coming back to topic, the point I'm trying to make is, whenever Martin Gore gets dark and edgy, it's not because he's trying to be pretentious, it's just the way he really sees things, and that is why it never comes across as naff. So, yeah, Martin Gore reserves the right to be grumpy and moody. But it's because it's done properly, that's why. Told You So, yeah, an absolute showstopper, and it's interesting, and then when Told You So is finished, it goes on to And Then. And Then is the way an album flows, and that is something that we've lost these days because people don't tend to listen to whole albums anymore. But coming back to the time, guys, back in those days, artists and producers spent a lot of time considering the track listing and the order at which songs flow. And what's interesting is to take a song like Told You So, had the album ended on Told You So, told you so, told you, it would have just been a little bit jading. But the fact that they chose to end it with put it all down and start again from the top to the bottom, and then I have faith, or I prefer to think that things couldn't. So I do agree with the decision to end this album with And Then, because as I say, if we'd ended the album with Told You So, it would just be like, take the needle off and go, oh my God, I need a drink. But so you've just heard Told You So, and it's like, oh my God. And then this song comes in, let's take a map of the world, tear it into pieces. interesting the way he sings that song, the way he starts it. Reminds me very much of Roland Orzabal from Tears for Fears type vocal. I could imagine Roland from Tears for Fears singing that song. Think of it. What is it? Let's take a map of the world, tear it into pieces. He's got that kind of sort of lower larynx position. Sorry, talking singing geek here. Let's take a map of the world, tear it into pieces. All of the boys and the girls will see how easy it is. Take that song and imagine Roland from Tears for Fears singing it. It does kind of remind me of a Tears for Fears song, that. Another separate subject. And for those of you asking me to talk about Tears for Fears, I most certainly will. But yes, and that concludes the track listing for Construction Time Again. Guys, this album was... I loved it when I first heard it. It grew on me even more, and listening to it again, you know, in preparation for this album review series, it's stunning, absolutely stunning. Once again, looking at the technology that was available to them at the time and what they came up with. This album will always have a very special place in my heart. And as I said before, this was the beginning of the awesome Depeche Mode that we grew to love. Right, it's time for the 5 questions. Question 1, if I were to lose a song from this album, which one would it be? There is not one song on this album that I dislike, but if I had to lose one, I would say The Landscape is Changing. I would choose to lose that. Sorry, Alan, but yes, I would lose The Landscape is Changing. Question 2, which is the most radical track on this album? Well, I think without a doubt, Pipeline, for sure. Which song have I listened to the most on this album throughout the years? Hard to say, but I would probably say Everything Counts. I loved it the first time I heard it, and I mean, I heard the 101 version of Everything Counts before I heard this version. As I said, the first time I ever heard Depeche Mode, I heard Violator, and then I heard 101. So I heard the 101 version before I heard the studio version. So yeah, question 3, I think Everything Counts is the song which I had listened to the most over the years. Question 4, which song do I like the most on this album now? And the reason we had that question is because obviously when we have owned these albums for years, we tend to listen to them for years, and then we tend to favor different songs throughout the years. But at this moment in time, the song that I like the most on this album is Told You So. And question 5, what am I going to rate this out of 10? Well, guys, for production, sound, enthusiasm, everything that goes with this, I'm going to rate Construction Time Again 8 out of 10. And that concludes my album review for Depeche Mode's third studio album, Construction Time Again. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. I must remind you that the next episode will have Brian Griffin in, and Brian Griffin is going to be talking to us about his time with Depeche Mode. And of course, this was, I believe, his most adventurous and daring album cover to date, which was, you know, going up the Alps to photograph this iconic image. And we have variations of those images, which are that one, which we're calling the white cloud version. And there's this one, which we're calling the blue sky version. Brian Griffin has made them available through my channel, but I'm going to get him to explain that to you when he comes onto the channel next. As I say, he'll be my special guest, and we'll be talking all about Construction Time Again and how he photographed this iconic album cover. Guys, I love you all. Thank you so much for your support. If it's your first time to this channel, please click like, subscribe. Join us on the Facebook page. I will leave links to that below. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Take care of yourselves.